what you're trying to, tell the potential authors out there or the current authors is that be mindful or be purposeful of your book. What problem are you trying to address, and how your book is going to be solving that problem or used in the future to solve that problem?
Yeah.
If I can paraphrase you.
Yes, very much so. And know that writing a book is a lot easier than, people are thinking. Especially you've spoken on podcasts, you're doing this podcast, you've got so much information that if it's in verbal form, it can be transcribed rather, and then work with an editor and pull together for a book. I mean, I always look for the easy button, Robin. I'm looking at why make it so hard, And I've written 18 books, so I know what it's like to sit there.
The easy button, Susan. You're just speaking my language now.
We can talk about the easy button. Yes, I mean. So, I've written books, I know, sitting down and looking at that blank screen and like, oh, where do I start?
My personal experience, and it's just anecdotally for the audience, I started writing a book, what is it, a year and a half ago now? A year ago almost. And I didn't know where to start. I have a lot to say about, selling in the language business, in the language industry. I spent the past 23 years in the language industry. And, I've taken small companies, grew them into larger companies, sold them, et cetera, 2-3 times. So I wanted to pass on that experience specifically, as you mentioned earlier, in the language industry. Some other people want to buy it, go ahead, buy it. But my purpose is the language industry and the transformation that the language industry is. So here's what I did. I thought, where do I start with this? So I started, people keep asking me, like, how did you become who you are? And when I tell my story, people are fascinated where I come from and where I am now. But where I come from is very fascinating, I think, to me. From the reaction I got a lot of people fascinated by where I come from. So I said, well, I would start from the beginning, from zero. Oh my God, I spent like 30,000 words and I'm not done yet on the beginning of where I started. I said, no. I got to reshape this. This doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah. An origin story, like you had me start with mine, which, you give a taster. You're looking at how can you, condense that in a format that gives people a little bit, or as you work through the book, you can give examples, your own examples, and then of course other examples of other people who you've worked with. But having a book specific to that audience is brilliant. How many other books are there on sales in that environment? Probably not very many. So you can be the go-to person, which is really what you want to look at. How can you have that thought leadership and be that go-to expert within a certain niche market? Hate to sound like a stuck record, but that's
No. It is. It is absolutely. It is. It's absolutely correct. And you mentioned it earlier because sometimes, sometimes people write in one language, but there are interests in other languages. And you mentioned your book has been translated. So what do you think of the, most authors, at least we live in North America, at least most authors I know about, they write in either English. In Canada, we write in French as well. But then there are interests in other languages from the same topic. Does translation help? Do you need to be careful? Does it lose meaning? Do you get into the cultural nuances, etc.?
It depends.
I know.
I'm currently working with an author in Bogota in Colombia, and she wrote her book in Spanish, but she does a lot of work in the US. And so, translating it into English is primary. And she could be selling both, to the Latino market. And she's focusing in that marketplace. And so, if it's beneficial for your book to be in another language, absolutely. Like, in Canada, you said if you're in Toronto, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we live very close to Montreal, and so that's very French. So if you've got a book, having it in English and French would be extremely valuable. So yeah, it just depends how it's going to help you.